Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this afternoon, we are going to look at the prime ministers and the leader of the opposition leader, rather, Mark Golding's very tepid speech, New Year's speech. And I want to forward the point of view that both Mark Golding and Andrew Holness need to wheel and come again. The neoliberal policies do not work, are not working for Jamaica, right? The neoliberalism and neoliberal policies are not working in the interest of Jamaica. And I have pulled up here a very basic definition of the word neoliberalism. And it's coming from the Oxford Dictionary, right? And it's a noun. The word neoliberalism is a noun, right? That's a part of speech. And it means a political approach that favors free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending. So the first thing it believes in the free market capitalism, which is not free market at all, but that's what they suggest, because what it does really is that the richer countries dominate the poor countries. What they suggest that is free, but it's not free. It's the opposite of what they're saying. Deregulation is when you deregulate your market. Your government does not have any regulation over importation. And also these richer countries can flood your markets in with lots of things, and they can come and buy up a lot of properties, as we see them doing in Jamaica. A reduction in government spending, have you heard that? And the government talks about fiscal discipline and all of that. These languages sound very well, right? And it sounds logical, but when you look at the picture more deeply, you will see that it is not true what they are doing, right? And we have to wake up and we've got to become educated, right? I could easily come here on this YouTube channel, and I could, you know, present a lot of sensational topics, as I see Jamaican YouTubers doing, and shouting and screaming. I could do the same, but I realize that that is not going to educate you. It might get me views, but it's not educating you in terms of how you need to be aware of what is happening in Jamaican government, in the politics of Jamaica. Now, let's look at the Observer this morning. PM pledges to build on success of 2024 to further improve Jamaicans' lives this year. And sometimes I do wonder which persons are writing the speeches of our Jamaican leaders or Jamaican politicians, because they're not living in the real world. They're not living in the real Jamaica. They're living in the Jamaica of the elites, right? Those who are doing well. Now, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has vowed that his administration will continue its strenuous efforts to improve the lot of Jamaicans this year against the backdrop of what he says were significant achievements last year. So the Prime Minister counts his achievements as being significant. In his New Year's message, Holness said 2024 tested the resilience of Jamaicans, but it also revealed their strength. It not only tested the resilience of Jamaicans, but it also revealed their strength. We face challenges. This is Prime Minister talking. Challenges with courage and celebrated achievements with pride. Category 4, Hurricane Beryl, badly damaged southern parishes. However, we staged the fastest and most comprehensive recovery from weather event of that magnitude in Jamaica's history. Now, listen to what the Prime Minister is saying. Within weeks of the disaster, your government was able to conduct assessments rapidly and distribute recovery grants of significant amounts. To date, just under 14,000 checks have been delivered to beneficiaries, the Prime Minister said. He argued that there is no question that his administration has had to deal with some of the greatest crises and shocks that have impacted the country in the last 100 years. Listen to what Prime Minister Andrew Holness is saying, and I quote, "Any truthful observer must admit that we have handled these crises comparatively better than previous governments and on par, if not better, than governments of peer countries regionally and even globally." Wow. Now, I don't know if that is true, but I guess the Jamaican people can attest to that fact, whether it's true or not. We can be certain that 2025 will bring its own set of multiple, frequent, intense, and overlapping crises and challenges. as global temperatures continue to rise. So this is all about climate change. And we're going to hear all of the boring stories about the climate crisis. Wars continue to drag on, and the global order becomes more uncertain. Rest assured that your government is preparing, constantly improving, and learning from every challenge to develop smart, caring, and sustainable responses, added Holness. Be careful when they use the word sustainable, because it's going to mean that you what? You will have nothing and you will be happy. It's coming from the words of from the World Economic Forum. So be careful of those sustainability and sustainable development. You've got to be careful when you hear them. These are buzzwords that what they are neoliberalism, and what they're trying to do is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are evidently getting poorer. He said the lesson to be taken from 2024 chapter in Jamaica's journey is that we must be ready for the next external economic shock, geopolitical crises, pandemic, or natural disaster. So we're going to be ready. The Prime Minister pointed to the strategy of long-term investments in equipment, personnel, intelligence, and leadership in the security forces, with serious crimes down significantly. So the crime rate has reduced significantly, not modestly, but it has reduced significantly in 2024 as one of the country's significant achievements. So Prime Minister Andrew Holness is suggesting to us, even though every day the newspapers were littered with stories about people brutally murdered in Jamaica, but the crime rate has gone down significantly, has been reduced significantly. And you wonder, what Jamaica is the Prime Minister living in? But let's continue. In terms of the economic performance, our economic performance continued to be strong. Unemployment continued to decline to the lowest in our history. Inflation declined to well within the targeted band of 4 to 6%. Now, let us look at the unemployment, or the employment rate that they're talking about. Unemployment has been reduced, but how has it been reduced? When we look at the level of criminality in Jamaica, we know that, yes, it has been reduced because guess what? People are engaged in criminality. And outside of the criminal elements and the criminal landscape in Jamaica, we also have social media, and people are doing things on social media, independent of government regulation, I should say. So the government cannot really say that the reduction in the unemployment rate is as a result of what the government is doing, that the government has provided all of these jobs. And remember now that there are more people unemployed in Jamaica than are employed. That's why we have the level of crime and violence. They have nothing to do. So they have to engage themselves in unproductive things. And that is what is happening. It's the lack of production, the lack of engagement that is creating the high criminal elements in Jamaica that has caused crime and violence to have augmented over the years. Inflation, so inflation has been reduced, interest rates have come down steadily, or a dollar has been trading steadily, or a dollar has been trading stably, sorry, not steadily, but stably over the past year, and our national debt to GDP ratio is set to fall below 70%. This is the lowest in 30 years. So we are set now to fall below 70% of GDP. Now, one of the things I would like to ask, if you have a child and you have some money in your bank account, and you tell the child that you have to deprive the child of food or nutritious food, of education or good education, and all the things that a child should get to grow up and to become a productive citizen. If because you're thinking that a hurricane might be in the future, or a future shock, or some unforeseen war that lies ahead, and you decide not to spend that money on the child, to invest your hard-earned money on the child, but to save the money in the bank for some unforeseen natural disaster, or for some unforeseen climate change occurrence, do you think that would be a wise move? Do you really think that would be a wise move? Well, that is what the government is doing. The government is saying to you that they have all of this money saved up, and they'll be able to help you in the event of a natural disaster. And yet still, there is a lack of development in the country. The infrastructure is collapsing. Education doesn't have enough funds to build new schools and to also rebuild and to refurbish the schools that are already existing. We can't pay our teachers, so our teachers are leaving. We can't pay our nurses, so our nurses are leaving. So we have a collapsing healthcare system. But yet still we're doing well because we have all of those reserves in the bank, right? We have all of those reserves in the bank for any unforeseen shock ahead of us. That is insanity to me. And that is the version of insanity, that you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's what we're doing. We're doing the same thing over and over again. And that is why I'm advancing the theory this morning. And I'm sure I'm right, that neoliberalism does not work. These policies, these neoliberal policies are not working for Jamaica. It's not working for the Jamaican economy. And when is the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition going to understand that? Now, he further pointed to the significant investments in infrastructural programs and increases in the social safety net programs as proof of the government's strong performance. So I guess we have lots of investments there. Now, this is what the Prime Minister is saying, and I quote, "These achievements are phenomenal and uncontestable. However, we also hear and pay close attention to the feeling and realities of many Jamaicans who have suffered through the global spike in inflation for the last 3 years, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the supply chain shock. Food, electricity, transportation, medication, and basic amenities have become unaffordable for many. I hear your cry regarding the cost of living," declared Holness. Does Andrew Holness really hear the cries of Jamaica as far as the cost of living is concerned? I don't think so. And like the Democratic Party in the United States, he's doing the same thing of ignoring the cause and just, saying lively, right? Flippantly, he's just dealing with the problem as if it really doesn't exist. He hears their cries, but what is he doing about it? And that is why the Democratic Party lost in the United States. They were saying that they understood the anguish of the people, but they were doing nothing about it. In the Gaza area, when the people were clamoring that they need to do something about the genocide that has been taking place in the Gaza area, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the Democratic Party were just, okay, yeah, we hear your cry, we understand what's going on there. But did absolutely nothing. Neither did she want to listen to any solution that the constituents might have proffered. She was just not concerned. She was just in her own world. And it seems to me that Andrew Holness, like Kamala Harris, is in his own world. Now listen to what Holness is saying here. Though the number of Jamaicans employed is the highest it has ever been, the minimum wage has been increased and wages generally have increased. So why are the teachers leaving? Why are the doctors and the nurses leaving? Why are we having a very high rate of brain drain in Jamaica if the wages had increased? We understand that wages have been so low for so long that there is still pent-up pressure despite the efforts of the government to create the economic environment where more Jamaicans can have income and inflation is controlled. He argued that the improvements in the economy have allowed more Jamaicans with incomes to effectively demand goods such as cars and housing. Man have enough phone and man have enough gal. Because all that's a sign of development when people have phones and they can drive in new cars, in fancy new cars. The number of vehicles on our roads, this is what Holness is saying, has almost doubled in the last 8 years, even though we have a collapsing road infrastructure. Even though Jamaica has a collapsing road infrastructure, but the number of vehicles have doubled in the last 8 years to over 500,000. The housing market has been so responsive to the increasing number of Jamaicans who are seeking housing solutions in the lower income to lower middle income segment of the housing market, right? So Jamaicans have a lot of cars on the road, so that's the sign of development. Irrespective of how they might have procured those cars, Andrew Holness is not concerned. He's just saying that there are lots of cars on the roads. Now, listen to what he's saying. I hear the cry of the hairdresser, mechanics, clerks, and factory supervisors who have been contributing to the NHT, the National Housing Trust, for years, but cannot find a house for the mortgage for which they are qualified. And equally, I hear the cry of the motorist about the damage to their vehicles and the time in traffic due to poor road conditions, said Holness. Right? So the cost of living or the cost, yeah, it's not just the cost of living that has gone up. The cost of doing business has also increased. And this is not only the impact on inflation, much of the increased cost is due to government regulation, some imposed by international obligations, but much of it is caused by the inefficient and antiquated government bureaucracy. I hear the cry of the small business and medium-sized business owners who are struggling under the weight of heavy bureaucracy. Right? So he's saying that he understands the pain. But what is he doing about alleviating the pain? Right? Holness continues, this year is a pivotal chapter in a larger journey toward a Jamaica that is affordable for all, safe, efficient, productive, caring, and peaceful. I know you understand the importance of reducing debt, keeping the exchange rate stable by having strong reserves and managing the fiscal affairs of the country to avoid profligate spending. So it's all about government reduction in spending. And what does that do in terms of helping our economy to grow if we are constantly, year after year, trying to reduce debt without any development strategy or plan? That seems to me that it's impoverishing us. Because if, as I'm suggesting to you, if you have a child and you're just trying to reduce debt or to reduce your budget, the budget of your home, and you're not educating your child because you're saying that, you know, it's too costly and I have to reduce my debt. What are you going to do to that child and the child's future? Right? What are you doing to that child's future? And to your future, because an investment in a child also could be an investment in you. Right? And this is the sort of thinking that is so commonplace in Jamaica at the moment. It is so commonplace, and our people are not complaining. They're not holding the government to account. Right? Now, Andrew Holness says here, there's a delicate balance which must be carefully managed, and my administration has demonstrated time and time again through crises and shocks and time of stability that we are the best government at managing the economy and delivering the needs of the people. So that is what he's suggesting. They're in election mode, right? And he's suggesting that he is the best prime minister. Now, that's interesting sort of contestation, right, by the Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness. Now, the Gleaner this morning carried the story Election Watch, and I shall not repeat what the Prime Minister has said because, you know, we have already spoken about his, you know, his great accomplishment, his mammoth accomplishment, that we shall not be looking at that anymore. We know that that is not true. But let us look at what Golding is saying. Golding has, however, declared that by all accounts, his party will not be in opposition for long, noting that ahead of the constitutionally due general election by September of this year, his team will continue to consult with and engage the people, bringing forward our vision for a better Jamaica and the championing the causes that matter deeply to you. So one of the things that both of them do is that we know that both of them are neoliberal prime ministers. Both the opposition leader, Mark Golding, and Andrew Holness, the prime minister, they believe in neoliberalism. And we did cite to you, I did quote to you what that term means, what neoliberalism means. Let me see if I can find the definition again from the Oxford Dictionary that I used to define neoliberalism. So it means a political approach that favors free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending. That is what they're all about, but it's not in the interest of the masses. We have been forwarding this to you that what they're doing is not in the best interest of the masses of Jamaicans. Okay? Now, Golding said a government he leads will improve the systems of education and training for Jamaican children and youths to build a productive and globally competitive workforce at all levels. How? How are you going to do that? Nothing is said. So they're just making these generalized statements, these broad sweeping statements, but they have no specifics of how they are going to do it. Where is he going to get the money from if we have to be constantly reducing debt? That's the question that we need to ask him. But I'm sure Jamaicans are not going to ask, particularly those who are diehards. He said stronger actions will be taken against corruption and holding accountable those who violate the public trust by scraping public resources for private benefit. The opposition leader said more effective strategies will be implemented for reducing violent crime and improving the experience and outcomes of people seeking healthcare in public hospitals. How? How? These are grandiose plans. And I'm not going to knock Mark Golding for saying these things. But I would like to hear the specifics, and Jamaicans ought to ask them, how are they going to achieve this? How are they going to accomplish it? Because it's a great thing to say what you're going to do. But how are you going to do it? I'm going to get a PhD. I'm going to make $1 million next year. How am I going to accomplish that? It's great to say that we're going to do these things. So these are just empty, vacuous New Year's resolution by these two neoliberal leaders, politicians. He's also promising to bring down the price of electricity. How? Which he said is a national imperative for driving economic growth and to make bureaucracy more efficient rather, so that Jamaica is an easy and welcoming place to invest and to do business. But is that just the bureaucracy? The bureaucracy is one in which also where people are not just efficient by nature, and they don't have the the welcoming, warm spirit that they should have to help people and to make people want to do business in Jamaica. Golding said ahead of an anticipated intense political climate, the nation's leaders must set an example by word and deed that there is no place for violence and intimidation in the country's political affairs. He said Jamaica's leaders must ensure that there is no repetition of the offensive and divisive rhetoric, which sometimes soiled national discourse in 2024, arguing that it offends the spirit of one love and violates the ideals of togetherness embraced in Jamaica's motto, out of many, one people. And I'm sure he's referring there to the fact that they're calling him British and he's white and all of that, and he is the descendant of slave masters and all of that nonsense, right? This is what and I would have to agree with him that we ought not to attack people based on their ethnicity, right? We can't attack people based on their ethnicity. Simply put, by the color of their skin, by the shape of their nose and eyes, and all of the physical things that you look at. We should judge them by the content of their characters. And if we're doing that in Jamaica, if we are racist against Mark Golding because of the color of his skin, then we ought not to complain when you go to the United States, when you go to Canada, when you go to Great Britain, right? We ought not to complain when they are racist against us, when these European people are racist against us, if we are going to be racist against Mark Golding. And if there is a Black person in the British Parliament or a Black person in the American Congress, then they have all rights to say we don't want any descendants of slaves in our parliament or in our Congress. If you suggest that there should not be any white man in the Jamaican parliament, who is Jamaican, who is Jamaican 100%. If he goes to Great Britain tomorrow, if Mark Golding goes to Great Britain tomorrow, he's not going to be seen as British. He's not going to be viewed as being a British person. He is going to be viewed as a Jamaican. As he opens up his mouth, they're going to say, you don't speak like us. He speaks English, but he does not speak English with a British accent. Right? And his mannerisms are Jamaican. And we should know that. The police must conduct themselves. This is what Mark Golding speaking. The police must conduct themselves with absolute professionalism. The nation is relying on you to protect or to reject, rather, sorry, partisanship in the conduct of your duty to serve and protect all Jamaicans, he urged. I don't know if that can be achieved because our country is partisan and it's political, and even in the both administrations, they buy out the public sector when they come into office. We know that that's what happens there. Golding said for the remaining, it would be nice if Mark Golding could change that culture, but that culture has been embedded in us for so many years, for centuries. I don't know if he's going to be able to change that. Golding said for the remaining period in opposition, his team will continue to perform its national duty of vigilantly holding the government to account and defending the Constitution from any machinations which violate the principles of good governance and erode the rights of our people. Will he? You know? So they have their wonderful agendas and their promises that they're making to the Jamaican people. But they have not said to us how they're going to achieve it. And you cannot begin also a lie by lying to the Jamaican people, which they are doing, right? Both Mark Golding and the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, are lying to the Jamaican people. And there's a letter here to the editor written in Jamaican Gleaner today, and I wanted to read some parts of it because it's a very good letter written by a reverend, a pastor. I don't call people reverend. They're nobody. Only God is reverend, and we should call no man a reverend, even though that's his title. But nobody should have title to that, but God Himself, right? Because reverend and holy is He. No man is holy, and we ought not to take on those sort of titles. But I'm just suggesting that that's the title that he uses. So the consequences of misguided leadership, that's the title of the article that the pastor, the bishop, I would call it, yes, I would preferably the bishop. You can call yourselves, because bishop is a biblical word too, right? So you can call yourselves bishop, but not reverend. Now, listen to what the article is saying. As we step into a new year, I feel compelled to address a pressing concern in our society, the troubling reality of leadership that misleads, and the assurance that God will hold these leaders accountable. Whether in secular contexts or within the Christian community, the consequences of misguided leadership are evident, and it's imperative that we recognize the weight of this responsibility as we embark on the fresh start in 2025. Throughout history, both the Bible and secular literature have underscored the expectations placed on those in positions of authority. Proverbs 29, verse 12 states, and I quote, "If a ruler listens to falsehood, all his officials will be wicked." I repeat, if a ruler listens to falsehood or lies, all his officials, not some, will be wicked. So when we lie to ourselves, the lies that our politicians tell us, it means therefore that we, even the people, are going to be wicked, because we are beholden to the lies that our politicians tell us. This speaks directly to the dangers of leaders who choose to surround themselves with flattery or misinformation, ultimately leading their followers astray. And that is what we are hearing from particularly Prime Minister Andrew Holness, this flattery. He's flattering himself about his achievements in the party as a government official, that he is the best person to shepherd the economy, which is not true. Okay? They're both doing the same thing. As we enter this new year, we must commit to upholding truth and integrity in leadership. For when leaders fail in this regard, the consequences ripple through their communities, causing harm to the very people they are called to serve. And perhaps that's one of the reasons we're having the high crime and violence rate there, because we have been lying to ourselves, right? And we have a strong aversion to hearing the truth. In Christian teachings, James 3 verse 1 warns, and I quote, "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness," and I unquote. This serves as a sober reminder that spiritual leaders must be careful, stewards of the truth, as their words and actions have profound implications, and we are living in a society post-truth. People are asking, what is truth? Well, truth is what you need to find out for yourself. Misuse or of influence not only undermines trust, but also disobeys God's commandments, incurring his judgment. In the secular arena, leadership accountability is equally critical. Individuals in positions of power, be it in government, business, or community organizations, must operate with transparency and integrity. And have been using this word on my channel for a long time. Transparency and integrity. The downfall of leadership due to corruption or deceit often leads to societal upheaval and loss of public trust. And that is when we have revolutions and the society is totally torn apart. Now, we have come in our times to, day and age, we romanticize revolutions, but revolutions are not good because a lot of times it really destroys the entire society. And unfortunately, a lot of times the elites are protected. Some of them might be hurt and some of them might be murdered, but more likely than so, the proletariat, the citizens are the ones who are greatly destroyed and their lives. As we reflect on the past year, let us remember the consequences faced by leaders who betrayed their ethical responsibilities, reminding us that temporal power is fleeting. I encourage Andrew Holness and Mark Golding to read that article, to read that letter to the editor that appeared in the Jamaican Gleaner this morning. And it's entitled "The Consequences of Misguided Leadership." Right? And our leadership in Jamaica is a misguided one. Both the PNP and the GLP do not understand what good leadership is all about. And it's time for us now to challenge our politicians and to let them know that Jamaica belongs to Jamaica. I mean, I don't know if it belongs to us anymore because it has been sold out. We have allowed Jamaica to have been sold out on the platform that, we're living in a new age, we're living in a new era, so we have to, function in a global economy. Now, I have presented this to you. I wish you a happy new year. I hope that you will now begin to reflect and you'll begin to educate yourselves, to read more, to engage more, and to see and to pray for your politicians. That's what we need also. Our politicians need prayer. Do not defy them. Do not let them think that they are gods, but because they are fragile, finite human beings, that you ought to pray for them so that God will bless them, endow them with wisdom and knowledge and understanding. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Remember to share the videos so that the videos can be shared with many people and many more subscribers can come. Remember, if we don't have lots of subscribers, our channel cannot be kept alive. So it's very important that you respond so that it can trigger the algorithm and the video can be shared with as many people as possible. See you then. All the best to you. Bye.